Today we will discuss about antigen-antibody interactions. So the antibody molecules, they have the ability to combine with antigens in a reversible manner. Thereby they form complexes which are called as antigen-antibody complexes. So this complex formation occurs through interactions between the chemical groups on the surface of antigens, and these regions are called as epitopes of antigens, and they interact with a specific region on the antibody which is called as the paratope. So when there is an antigen antibody interaction, the interaction is actually localized between the epitope of the antigen and the paratope of the antibody. Now, there are three major features of antigen-antibody interactions. First one is that their interaction works like a lock and key mechanism. That means they are having specificity. The reaction between an antigen and antibody is showing specificity, just like an enzyme is specific towards its substrate. But how it differs from enzyme-substrate complexing? In an enzyme-substrate complexing, the resultant is that the enzyme converts the substrate into a product. That means it leads to an irreversible alteration, whereas such an alteration doesn't take place in an antigen-antibody interaction. And coming to the combining sites of antigens and antibodies, the specific region on the antigen with which it interacts with the antibody is called as the epitope, and that particular region on the antibody which will interact with the epitope of the antigen is called as the paratope, or you can call as the antigen binding site of the antibody. And the antibody molecule, it is having a structure which is made up of 4 polypeptide chains, of which 2 are light chains and 2 are heavy chains, which are linked together by disulfide bonds and other types of interactions. And in each heavy chain and light chain, there are 2 regions which are called as the variable region and the constant region. So each heavy chain and light chain will be having a variable region and a constant region, and the variable region of the antibody is that part which will interact with the specific antigen, whereas constant region is same, or the sequence of the amino acid sequence of the constant region is same for all antibodies belonging to the same class, for example IgA or IgG or IgD. So an antibody class will be having the same type of constant regions, but the variable regions differ. So it is the variable region of an antibody that gives it specificity towards its particular antigen. And the combination of the antigen and antibody is just like a lock and key. That means there is complementarity between the epitope of the antigen and the paratope of the antibody. If the antibody is subjected to the action of an enzyme called as papain, it will be fragmented into 2 types of fragments. They are called as the FAB fragments and the FC fragments. FAB refers to the antigen binding fragment. That means FAB is that fragment of the antibody which is responsible for antigen binding, because it is that part which consists of the variable region, whereas FC is considered as the crystallizable fragment. It has no complementarity with the antigen. So the FAB region of the antibody interacts with the epitope of the antigen. And this FAB region, or the variable region of an antibody, is itself having a number of hypervariable regions which gives it absolute specificity. So the variable region instead is having certain domains which are called as a hypervariable regions, with which it shows maximum specificity towards its particular type of antigen. So it just operates like a lock and key mechanism. Now, coming to the type of interaction, that is, the antigen and antibody interact usually non-covalently with the help of hydrogen bonds, electrostatic bonds, van der Waals forces, ionic bonds, hydrophobic interactions, etc. And these interactions are usually highly specific, and there occurs multiple bonding between antigen and antibody, and this ensures that the antigen antibody complexing is very tight. And another peculiarity is that the antigen antibody complexing occurs through such weak non-covalent bonds, so the reactions are reversible and there is no formation of a new product like enzyme substrate action. Next property is the affinity of an antibody. Antibody affinity, it is the strength of the reaction between a single antigenic determinant or a single epitope and a single paratope of the antibody. So epitope is on the surface of the antigen and paratope is the variable region of the antibody. So the strength of reaction between a single epitope and a single paratope is referred to as affinity. So it is a sum of attractive and repulsive forces operating between the antigenic determinant and the combining site of the antibody. The affinity of an antibody may be high or low. If it is of high affinity, that means there will be more forces operating to hold the epitope and the paratope, and the number of forces, so the strength of interaction will be less if the antibody is of low affinity. So different types of antibodies will be having different affinity properties. Then coming to avidity. Avidity describes the strength with which an antibody binds to a complex antigen. Consider two antibodies, that is IgG antibody and IgM antibody. IgG, it is a monomer, whereas IgM is a pentamer. IgG has got very high affinity to the antigen, to the epitope of the antigen. IgG is a monomer which has got two antigen binding sites, as it is seen on the left side of the diagram, where the strength of interaction between the paratope of IgG and the epitope of the antigen, it is very high. So it has got high affinity towards the antigen. Whereas on the right side of the diagram, we can see the IgM antibody, which is a pentamer. So it is having theoretically 10 antigen binding sites. That means it can interact with the antigen with more number of sites. It can interact with more number of sites on the antigen. So the total binding strength is very high. Even though the affinity is low compared to IgG antibody, the avidity is high because the number of interactions is higher. So avidity is conferred to by the number of epitopes and the number of paratopes. So avidity refers to the strength of all the combined interactions. IgM antibody is having low affinity to the antigens, but there are 10 antigen binding sites on IgM, so its avidity is high. So avidity can be considered as the functional affinity of an antibody. So that is the difference between affinity and avidity. When affinity is the strength of interaction between a single epitope and a paratope, avidity refers to the total strength. That means it is the measure of the total binding strength of an antibody at every possible binding site of antigens. Cross reactivity is the ability of a particular antibody or a T cell receptor to react with two or more antigens which have a common epitope. So, for example, there is anti-A antibody. This anti-A is specific to the antigen A, as shown in the left side of the diagram. Whereas, consider another antigen which is called antigen B, which is a different protein, but it has got an epitope which is similar to the epitope of antigen A. So it is called as a shared epitope. So the antibody which is specific to the antigen A will also bind to antigen B because of the presence of the same epitope on its surface. So it can be considered to be a shared epitope. Now another antigen is antigen C. It comes into play here. This antigen C is having a different epitope, but it is structurally similar to the epitope on the surface of antigens A and B. Though it is not exactly the same epitope, it has got structural similarity with the epitope, so that this anti-A antibody can also bind to antigen C. So, this antibody is actually specific for antigen A, but because of the similarities of the epitopes, it can bind to antigens B as well as antigen C. That is what is called as cross-reactivity. The receptors present on the surface of T cells also show cross-reactivity. That is, as it is seen on the left side, we can see that each T cell is specific to a particular antigen, whereas on the right side it can be seen that there are cross-reactive T cells whose receptors can bind to different types of epitopes. So, that is what is called as cross-reactivity. Cross-reactivity means the antibody elicited by one antigen can cross-react with an unrelated antigen. It occurs if two different antigens share identical or very similar epitope. Then the examples are, in vaccinia virus, there are antigens which are called as the cowpox antigens. They are cross-reactive to the smallpox antigens which are seen in variola virus because they share similar or identical epitope. So, the antibodies which are specific to one of these antigens can also bind with the other antigen. The infection with Streptococcus pyogenes in humans can lead to the production of antibodies. These antibodies can also bind to certain proteins present on heart and kidney. The cell wall proteins present on Streptococcus pyogenes, which are called as M antigens, they are very similar to certain muscle and skeletal muscle proteins and cardiac muscle proteins present on heart and skeletal muscles. So, thus the antibodies for Streptococcus pyogenes are cross-reactive to the antigens on heart and skeletal muscle proteins. There are glycoproteins on RBC surface. Antigens will be produced against them. They can also bind to certain bacterial antigens. So, there also we can see the property called as cross-reactivity. Next, we come to antigen-antibody interactions. There are two main types of antigen-antibody interactions. They are agglutination and precipitation. So, agglutination is the interaction between antibody and a particulate antigen or an insoluble antigen, which leads to visible clumping because the antigen is particulate or it is insoluble. So, that is what is called as agglutination, and those antibodies which bring about agglutination are called as agglutinins. Then, the second type of antigen-antibody interaction is precipitation. It is the interaction between the antibody and the soluble antigen in an aqueous solution, and they both form a lattice which develops into a visible precipitate. That is why this reaction is called as precipitation. And those antibodies which lead to precipitation reactions are called as precipitants. So, in a precipitation reaction, an immune complex is formed with the antibody and the soluble antigen or the molecular antigen, whereas in agglutination, an immune complex will be formed between the antibody and the antigenic particles. For example, the clumping of erythrocytes, the clumping of latex particles, agglutination of bacteria, etc. are examples of agglutination reactions. Now, coming to precipitation, the formation of a lattice between the antibody and the soluble antigen depends upon certain factors. The first thing is the valency of both the antibody and the antigen. Valency means the number of epitopes on the antigen and the number of paratopes on the antibody. For precipitation to occur, the antibody must be at least bivalent. That means it should have two binding sites. A precipitate cannot be formed if the antibody fragments are monovalent. That means if after papain digestion we know that the antibody is cleaved into two FAB fragments. So, they are separated. If it is a non-digested antibody in its native form, it will be having two binding sites because it is having the shape of Y and the two arms. Each one is having one antigen binding site. but after papain treatment, they two will be separated. That is, we get two FAB fragments. And if you are having a solution with FAB fragments, you are incubating this solution with a mixture containing soluble antigens. There will be no precipitation because there is no cross-linking, there is no lattice formation, because every antibody present in the solution is monovalent. So precipitation cannot occur. So for precipitation to occur, the antibody must be at least bivalent. Second thing, the antigen, it should also be minimum bivalent or polyvalent. That means it must have at least 2 copies of the same epitope, or it should have different epitopes that react with different antibodies present in the serum. If the serum is polyclonal serum means a serum containing different types of antibodies that can bind with different types of antigens. And so these antigens should have different types of epitopes which get specifically bound to different antibodies in that mixture. For example, take the case of an antigen myoglobin. This myoglobin is having different types of epitopes on its surface, but each epitope is present as a single copy. And suppose the 3 epitopes are A, B and C. A seen in blue, A indicated as blue in the diagram, B indicated as red in the diagram, and C indicated as grey in the diagram. So consider these 3 are the epitopes present on the surface of myoglobin, and each one is present only as a single copy. Now suppose this myoglobin is incubated with serum which is containing anti-A, anti-B and anti-C antibodies. So we are incubating myoglobin with serum, with polyclonal serum which is containing 3 types of antibodies. So what happens? On the epitope B of myoglobin, anti-B antibody will come and bind. Consider an anti-B antibody which will come and bind to the only B epitope on myoglobin. So myoglobin is having an epitope B which is present only as a single copy. It is bound to an anti-B antibody which is present in the polyclonal serum. Now this anti-B antibody has got another variable region also, because it is in Y shape. So with one arm it has combined with the first myoglobin. With the other arm it will combine with another myoglobin on its B antigen. So there is possibility of a cross-linking. And now the same myoglobin molecule which is now bound to an anti-B antibody can also be trapped by an anti-C antibody present in the serum, because on this myoglobin there is another epitope called as C. So this C will be bound to the anti-C antibody present in the serum, and this anti-C antibody with its other arm or with its other paratope will bind to another myoglobin. So this will lead to the formation of a cross-link or a lattice between myoglobin molecules and the different types of antibodies present in the polyclonal serum. Whereas if you are incubating myoglobin with monoclonal antibodies are a collection of antibodies all which are specific to one antigen. So you are incubating this myoglobin molecule with a serum which is containing only anti-A antibodies. What will happen? These anti-A antibodies will combine only with the epitope A on myoglobin surface. So each antibody will combine with only 2 myoglobin molecules, and there is no cross-linking possible because there is no other antibody in the serum. There is neither anti-B antibody nor anti-C antibody in the monoclonal serum. Only anti-A antibodies are present. So interaction will take place only between these antibodies and the epitope A on myoglobin surface, giving no chance for a cross-linking. But this is not the case with polyclonal serum. So that is why it is said that for precipitation reaction to occur, not only the antibody should be bivalent or polyvalent, the antigen should also be bivalent or polyvalent. And the example is seen as shown in the case of myoglobin, which is having different types of epitopes, but each epitope in a single copy. So it will form a precipitate only with polyclonal serum. It won't give precipitate with monoclonal serum. There is also relationship between the concentration of antigen and antibody with precipitation. That means there is a particular concentration at which there will be maximum precipitation. That is called as the equivalent zone of maximal precipitation. If the antigen is in excess or if the antibody is in excess, there will be no precipitation or the precipitation will be low. But there is a particular concentration range at which there will be formation of precipitation or complexes, below which or beyond which there will be decrease in the precipitation rate. So that range of antigen antibody concentration where there is maximum precipitation is called as the zone of equivalence or the equivalent zone of maximal precipitation, where the antigen and the antibody form large insoluble complexes and neither the antibody nor the antigen can be detected in the supernatant when you centrifuge this solution, because all have formed complexes. Whereas if antibody is in excess and antigen is in low concentration, there will be inhibition of precipitation and you can find lot of unbound antibodies in the supernatant when you centrifuge this solution. It is because antibodies are in excess. There is not enough antigen to get bound with the antibody, and so cross-linking or lattice formation is not possible. Similar is the case when antigen is in excess. This is called zone of antigen excess, where precipitation is inhibited and you can find a lot of unbound antigen in the supernatant when the solution is subjected to centrifugation. So there is a particular concentration of antigen and antibody at which there will be maximum complex formation. Now the second type of antigen-antibody interaction is called as agglutination, which is the interaction between an insoluble or a particulate antigen with an antibody. So this depends upon the cross-linking of polyvalent antigens. So here also you require polyvalent antigens with different types of or many types of epitopes. Here also, just like precipitation, if there is an excess of antibody, there will be inhibition of agglutination. And this inhibition, because of the presence of excess of antibody compared to the antigen, is called as prozone effect. So inhibition of agglutination by excess of antibody is called as prozone effect, because at high antibody concentrations, the number of antibody binding sites will greatly exceed the number of antigenic epitopes. And as a result, what happens? Most antibodies bind antigen only univalently instead of multivalent binding. And there will be less cross-linking. Antibodies which bind univalently, they cannot cross-link one antigen to the other. So this is the problem with excess antibody concentration. That will lead to univalent linking. It won't allow cross-linking because antigen is in lesser concentration compared to the antibody which is in excess. So most of the antibodies bind univalently, which will not permit cross-linking. So the anti-serum may contain high concentration of antibodies, but it will not bind to the antigen, but it will not induce agglutination, because for agglutination to form there requires complex formation and cross-linking. Often such inhibition is caused by IgG antibodies because they are having a lesser valency compared to IgM antibodies who have got more number of paratopes. So if there is excess of IgG antibodies in serum, it may even lead to inhibition of agglutination. At high concentrations of IgG, incomplete antibodies may occupy most of the antigenic sites, thereby forming monovalent combinations, thus blocking access by IgM. Even if IgM is present in that solution, IgM will not be able to bind to the antigen because most of the antigens are bound to IgG who have got higher affinity. So because of the high affinity of IgG, they all bind to the antigens which are in low numbers and they all form monovalent bindings. And IgM has no antigen to bind with and it has no chance to form a cross-linking. So in the presence of excess IgG antibodies, the formation of agglutination or agglutination by IgM antibodies can often be blocked. IgM in fact is a good agglutinin because of the presence of a number of paratops, because IgM is a pentamer compared to IgG which is a monomer. So if IgG is having high affinity, IgM is having high avidity. This avidity is being prevented by the excess presence of IgG antibodies. Now coming to the factors promoting complexing of antigen and antibody. First one is the complementarity between the antigen and the antibody. Second is the proximity or nearness between the antigen and the antibody. Third is the affinity and avidity. Fourth one is the valency, that is the number of epitopes and the number of paratops. Fifth is the concentration, that is it is at the zone of equivalence that maximum precipitation or agglutination occurs, and optimum pH, temperature and ionic strength are also factors which promote complexing between antigens and antibodies. And this antigen-antibody interactions, they form the basis for all immune mechanisms, for especially humoral immune mechanisms. They are used for the detection of disease-causing agents, the presence of some non-specific antigens like enzymes. This antigen-antibody interaction principle can be made use of or applied. Reactions between antigen-antibody occur in 3 stages. In the first stage, there is formation of antigen-antibody complex. In the second stage, there will be visible events like precipitation, agglutination, etc. And in the third stage, there will be the destruction of the antigen or its neutralization. So this is all about antigen-antibody interactions.